Okay, trying out some newness. Look at the chat here. Um, so Digital Liberation Front is about to have some changes in regard to how we operate, how we roll out. So on Friday, we're going to go over it tonight. We're actually meeting as a group to discuss what our operating um, model is going to be, and go over our articles of incorporation. We already did that a little bit on Sunday, but basically on tonight, everybody's supposed to return with their suggestions in regard to how things go, and then we're supposed to vote on it. That's what's supposed to happen. And then basically the members, those people who want to be members of our co-op media company, will be part of the initial articles of incorporation, and we will be a fully functioning, legally recognized body here in the state of North Carolina by Friday, hopefully. So, anyway, make a long story short, that's what's happening. But I wanted to talk a bit tonight. Well, first of all, I just wanted to try out this new model. I upgraded my Restream to the professional version, and I thought, what better interesting way to do a test run for this than to take it on to Facebook and use it to take one of my notorious Facebook discussions into the real world. And I don't anticipate, the funny thing is, there are a lot of people who follow me on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and whatnot, but not a lot of people who actually, are willing to go live with me and come out and have a discussion about how things operate, and the topic du jour. But whenever I posted something about Nick Cannon earlier today, I'm pretty sure by now everybody's heard about Nick Cannon. If you haven't, you're about to get up to speed. When I posted something about Nick Cannon earlier today, a lot of black Israelites hopped in. Apparently Nick Cannon made a statement on a podcast, his podcast. He operates on different platforms. He's the host of MTV's Wild 'N Out. He's the host of The Voice. And, I don't even know if he still does music. I know he tried to take on Eminem at one time, and that crashed and burned horribly. But make a long story short, he also hosts a podcast. And recently, he hosted Professor Griff from the old school hip-hop, one of the original hip-hop groups, Public Enemy, that's since been disbanded. Everybody's gone different ways for different reasons, and he touched on that a little bit. But what got Nick Cannon in trouble was basically his involvement, or some of the words he said in relation to basically Jews. There is a belief that black people are the original Jews, and black people are original Jews, and everybody else are the Jews that we recognize as Jews are not Jews. Hold 1 second. What's up,
Yes,
Darren?
sir. Yes, sir.
How you doing, man?
Brandon Johnson.
In the flesh.
Johnson, bro.
I'm happy. I was just talking to everybody about the fact that I normally go live and I don't have a lot of people, especially people that I may share some different views with. They don't really come online with me like that. So I salute you for coming on first and foremost. I thank you for you coming in participating today. So question, D. Can I call you D? I want to be disrespectful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, question, D. I know what. So, are you a Black Israelite? Like, you have a lot of knowledge about you know Black Israelite the religion, the faith. Break this down to me. Like, you believe Nick Cannon was right today?
I mean, it's tough to say right. But, well, put it this way, it's not going to be perceived as right.
Okay.
It's definitely not, because we have what are called powers that be that prevent a voice like this. And I just finished reading an article about it, and there's no question to the fact that he's about to get hit from all angles.
Oh yeah, trust and believe that this was the. I don't understand what if this was worse than him going after Eminem and crashing and burning horribly. In my opinion, this was he's about to get lit up. I want to understand where he's coming from.
I mean, well, I mean, the good thing is, there are avenues for him to continue to make money and be who he is. He's going to have to, in my opinion, start his career. His career, be it as an employee or a TV host or whatever the case may be, anywhere you have a European Jew connected to this man, and when I say European Jew, I mean of European descent, primarily Caucasian, unfortunately. You're going to get kickback, oppression, resistance. You're going to get boycotts, you're going to get terminations, eliminations. I mean, he's in for it. But it almost sounds to me like he's got the courage to take a stand and make it happen and find a way. He's going to have to find a way, in my opinion, because he's doomed right now from an American media standpoint. Doomed.
Okay.
In fact, that Cannon class that he has online might be all he has.
Okay.
Podcast.
So
he's doomed.
Where is he coming from? Like, where is this idea coming from about like real Jews versus fake Jews and black people are the real Jews? Like, where is that coming from?
Well, I'm gonna give you my personal perspective. I'm gonna give you the fruits of my research. From what I understand is this. From what I understand, yourself, myself, are both lost and scattered Hebrew Israel. We are that by way of the African diaspora and the American slave trade. When Jerusalem was sacked, Jews dispersed worldwide. Some went up to Europe, many went down to Africa, were scattered worldwide. The thing that makes it impactuous, in my opinion, is that it's biblically documented in advance. So you have an acknowledgement and identification of people that will be scattered, that will rediscover themselves, will be found, and will come together. Now, in between that and about the 7th to 8th century AD in Europe, you have a people by the name of the Khazars. And then biblically, you have a people by the name of the Ashkenazi or Ashkenazi, who converted into Judaism. From what I understand, without the sources in front of me, it was a strategic conversion, a mass conversion of people, a group of people, who, as a nation, if you will, made the decision to convert to Judaism. And then they migrated and made their way into Europe, established Europe essentially as their homeland, then began to take full ownership on themselves as Jews. Now, they're Jews by conversion, but not by bloodline. From what I understand, from what I've read, from what I've researched, you're a Jew by bloodline. You're a bloodline descendant of the 12 tribes of Israel. And the 12 tribes of Israel are Judah, Benjamin, Issachar, and so forth. Now, from what I understand, in that dispersion, the mass movement of Jews, or fleeing of Jews, or migration, you had Jews that came into North America through the tribes of, if I'm not mistaken, Gad and Asher. Now, when you talk about the tribes of Israel, you talk about 12 brothers, and each of their names leading to a family tree that can be traced to present day human beings. And then you have Gad and Asher here in North America. Now, the tribe of Judah, which is what Jesus will be considered a part of, dispersed down into Africa. And they were distinctly recognizable. They were a people, but they were also enslaved. While Africa had a slave trade where slaves were traded, large groups of slaves were traded throughout Africa and in and amongst Africa, not only did they trade slaves amongst themselves or maybe conquer a kingdom or a village or a nation or a group and take that group of slaves, they took the tribe of Judah into captivity and sold them as slaves to European seafarers. European seafarers are Spanish, English, and other European nations who are making maritime commerce from Europe straight down to Africa, buying slaves, taking slaves to the Caribbean and America. The slaves then produce crops, sugar cane, cotton, tobacco. Take that up to Europe, take the profits from that, and they continue that triangle. And over the course of 250 to 300 years, you have tens of thousands, you have hundreds of thousands, you have millions of people of color sold into slavery into America. And then you have a loss or a losing of identity.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, you have European Jews, converts, if you will, in that time frame, 1400, 1700, facilitating that same maritime commerce and maritime slave trade. So now you have a mass movement of people of color from the continent of Africa that are actually Hebrew Israelites who are then sold into slavery, lose their identity, then they become our forefathers.
Okay. So basically, if we're the real Jews, then who are the Jews that we recognize, the ones that, are in the nation of Israel? Well, where is that coming from?
Descendants of converts. And then what you have is that nation of Israel forces and establishes a homeland in Israel and becomes the Israelites or the Jews that we recognize to this day. But I would say from 1900 to right now. So for the last 120 years, we've acknowledged a different group of people as Jews. We've treated them as Jews. They've laid claim to their status as Jews. Judaism is their religion, if you will. But now you have a group of people that are not bloodline Jews, being presented as Jews. So that, to my knowledge, that's the breakdown. Now, biblically, when you get into the Bible, then you have prophecy. And then biblically, specifically in the book of Revelations, you have a true Jew and you have a false Jew.
Okay.
Okay, and you have the acknowledgement of that true Jew finally and eventually, and that false Jew, the biblical scripture literally says, bowing down to the feet of the true Jew. Now, not only that, which will blow you away, you have most of, if not all of Latin America, South America, Central America, being populated by those same tribes of Gad and Asher. And then with the African diaspora and the American slave trade, you have Judah being brought over. So now you have a combination of Judah, Gad, and Asher, three of the tribes of Israel, populating most of North America, being in America before Europe got here, and intermingling and procreating with Africans and the tribe of Judah, which would be the Hebrew Israelites who've lost their identity, so to speak. So now you have this combination of the red man and the man of color, the African or the Hebrew Israelite coming together to create what you and I have, which is a reddish brown hue. And
Okay.
then when you go to something like the walls of Egypt, you have Hebrew slaves, same complexion as you and I right now, working for the Egyptians, which are essentially Africans. There's a difference between Hebrew Israelites and Africans. Today, we lump them all together. And then when you get into 18th and 19th century America, you have things like Native Americans, Indigenous Americans, Indians, and other people of color, all being called Negroes. Now you lose it twofold. You lose it from being dispersed, you lose it from being sold into slavery, and you lose it from this new name that we're using. So,
Okay. So the red man. Who is the red man? Where
Well, you
what
know
tribe
the
are
red
they
man.
from?
Who would you call the red man?
Are we talking about Native Americans here?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, okay, all right, okay. So the red man and black people
Yes.
were two different tribes of
Well, I mean, you have a jet black African. I'm at a loss right now. I'm so used to looking up stuff and having memes handy and ready. So I'm in a different perspective right now. You have to bear with me. I'm not looking up anything.
Okay, I'm just trying to
You
understand.
have the jet black African. I mean, like, okay, in your opinion, let me ask you a question. Why are we the complexion that we are?
Why are we the complexion that we are?
You
Why?
and me right now, our complexions are similar. I'm looking at you on the screen,
Yeah.
looking at me on the screen. How did we end up to be this complexion?
I would say genetic variation based off of environmental factors.
Environmental. Okay, so let's go with environmental. Now,
Yeah.
you start your life tomorrow, and you're 25, and you meet a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman.
Mm-hmm.
She becomes your wife, and you have children. What complexion will those children be?
What complexion will the child be?
Yes, children of you and a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman. Will it be blonde-haired and blue-eyed?
They could be. I mean, if you go to Aboriginal Australia, there are blonde
I'm sure
haired.
there are, but what would, with the exceptions of albinism or birth defects or anything along those lines, let me ask this question. Would the children be darker than your blonde-haired, blue-eyed wife or the same complexion?
Yes, there would be a higher percentage of melanin in the child, more than likely. Yes.
So how can skin color be environmental? That's like saying if a jet
Well,
black African moves to Scandinavia
mm-hmm,
and stays there for 50 years, at the end of 50 years, he won't have blonde hair and blue eyes.
mm-hmm.
The wind, the sun, staying inside, none of that is going to change his complexion. That person is going to remain jet black. So when and where does an environmental factor play a factor in your race or the determination?
Well, I mean, it's not something that I believe occurs, immediately. Like boom. If two white people move to Africa and have a child, the child isn't just gonna pop out, black because there's more sun down there. I believe there's thousands of years of genetic, and environmental exchange where you accommodate the environment, causes genetic changes within a group of people. The people who are more suited for that environment are going to have more offspring. And so if you're in an area that, where there's a lot of sun, it's a tropical area or whatever, your melanin is going to, protect you more than it would somebody who has albinism, for instance. And the people who we can take that to science. The people who have albinism are extreme. Not just the people who have albinism. You can talk about the Irish, somebody who has freckles or whatever, and who's fair skinned. They burn easier in the sun. Asians same way, way more susceptible to sunlight than we are. So
Okay, I feel you. I understand.
So with that being the case, I would think that, if you had a tribe of Africans and somebody was born with albinism, that person would be more likely to contract, skin cancer, which could lead to their death. That means they aren't there to contribute to the genetics of their tribe or their area anymore. So I
Because
like,
of lack of melanin. Because of lack of melanin.
yeah,
Okay. Feel you. All right. So all right. Well, we can agree that you believe it's environmental, and I believe it's genetic. I
okay.
personally
I mean, I think
believe
they're
it.
the same. We are. I mean, they are mutually exclusive. Like you
Yeah.
said, like as you breed for specific genetic traits, we can look at animals. As you breed for specific genetic traits, if I have a dog and I'm breeding that dog to be a big dog, I partner with a bigger dog. You know, eventually I'm going to have a dog with the genetic phenotype that I'm looking for. I think I'm using that word right, but
Yeah.
that's what I would have. And then that dog, as long as it continued to have children, all those children would possess its characteristics. So genetically, they would be passing that down, but I would be manipulating that genetic code by selectively breeding that dog with other dogs that reflect characteristics that I want to see. You know what I'm saying?
That's exactly my point. So when you bring those two species together, those two types of dogs together, you're going to end up with a difference. But externally from the environment, like to me, in my opinion, we have the container of our birth to death. That's all that we have. We're not going to see a change within that birth to death, that life cycle of you and I. But when and if we procreate with someone with different characteristics or from a different race, if you will, because I know you don't believe in that, you're
Mhm.
going to have a different product.
Oh no, I believe there's a difference. Let's clear this up. I believe in genetics. I do not believe in race. There's a difference. I believe in race as a social construct. I don't believe in it beyond that. Like, I don't believe genetics and race are one. I believe genetics are used by people who believe in race to affix certain racial designations, but I don't believe in it beyond that.
I definitely agree with that in America. I mean, America is used as a tool of manipulation and control. Race definitely is, but I almost believe it cannot be argued. So if you bring 100,000 random Americans together in an open field tomorrow, you're going to have different races, you're going to have different hair types, you're going to have different blood types, you're going to have different DNA. And I mean, you know, how we treat race, how we deal with race, how we act and correspond and correlate with each other in terms of race in America is probably unique compared to the world. But I almost feel like race cannot be denied. Now, how you're treated or how you're received is another story, but race is race. The dark-skinned African and the blonde-haired Aryan are two different types. Both human beings, but two different types.
Okay, so we're agreeing that they're both human beings, though. Like, they're both able
Without
to
question.
breed
All
and
members
have
of
children together. And so, if, an Aryan
uh-huh.
breeds with, one of the original Jews, which we belong to or whatever, what do you have?
A mixed child.
Ah! Why is that is the getaway for everybody. Like, there's
Mixed child.
so there's somewhere they just become an other. So if they become an other, inevitably everybody is an other because of the fact that there's no way you're preserving those lines. Like, and we recognize that whenever, the original Hebrews were brought over here and partnered with the red man, which I think is kind of racist, calling him the red man. But when
Well,
they
I'm just talking about physical description.
Okay.
I don't mean anything derogatory. I mean, because to me, there's nothing derogatory about the color red.
okay,
Now, for people to get upset over red skin, okay. I mean, I can relate to that, especially if it was used derogatorily. So, if early Americans, 19th century Americans, all those redskins or kill the redskins, or if they use that term in a negative, nasty sense, it is what it is. I can't take that away from anybody. Or anyone who gets offended by red skin or the use of red. But when I'm referring to red, what I'm saying to you is not only are you and I brown, but we have a reddish hue to our brown. We are not flat brown. I can see the red in you.
Mm-hmm.
Better than me. That's all. Nothing else. Just physical description.
Facts. So we recognize that, like, I mean, just like you're talking about, there was that point where the red man, the black man, or the red man, the Hebrew, who is called black, had children, and we are based off of your observation.
Descendants of. Descendants, and it's just a general association. And
So
go ahead.
so did we? So in that breeding, did we eliminate the other race, because the quote unquote red man still exists? Like if a black man and a white person get together, has the white been obliterated? Are they gone?
No, it hasn't been obliterated. I mean, you can break down the DNA. If you get a DNA check or submit your DNA for the results, you're going to get everything. They're going to give you a list of everything. You're 13% this, 46% that, and they give you the breakdown. It's all intermingled in there. It all falls under the fact that we are members of the family. There's no question. We
Okay.
are members of. We are all human beings. One of my favorite sayings is, before we are a race or a religion, we are human beings. You're human
Okay.
beings first. You're human beings to this day. Now,
Okay.
all the races and religions, it's separation, it's the reason for wars, it's the reason why people are treated poorly or harshly or negatively, even enslaved. But we're all humans.
Okay. So we're all humans. We're all mixing together. It's one big melting pot now. I mean, there's been,
It's all melting pot.
hundreds of years since, at least 400. We talk about slavery, people, being brought over, and then seven in the comments here brought up a very, very, important statement. He was like, there were already black people here. Like, are you saying that there was one event where black people came over? Are you acknowledging the fact that people of color, may have come over before they were brought over here on slave ships?
Well, if you look at, say, the period of 1400 to 1600, Europeans started to come to America 1600 to 1650 for the first time. Okay, from 70 AD to 1600, tribes of Gad National were here. DNA in North America can be traced to one group of individuals that came over. All DNA up and through South America into North America can be traced to one root person or group. Okay, so the quote-unquote red man, the Native American, the indigenous Americans were here and established. They may not have had a government like Europe. They definitely didn't carry themselves like Europe or do the things that Europe did, that they were here. And then the European came. Then you have that intermingling, or the starting of the intermingling of races. Caucasian, Native American, Indian, Hebrew Israelite, tribe of Gad National, whatever you want to call it, Africans, slaves displaced from Africa to America. Now you have that intermingling. Today, even, like, for example, if and when there was a time before the European came, which I'm sure there was, and most, if not all, people were people of color. Once they began to intermingle with Caucasians, that complexion of that nation or people or group will begin to lighten. You agree or
Okay.
disagree?
So if I'm about to bring in a guest. She is Caucasian.
Okay.
She has children who are not Caucasian by your definition. They are. She had a child with one of the original Jews. She's had children with one of the original Jews. So there's somebody here who can give some, their own personal account, their own personal perspective on what. And that's one thing too. I have too, because I have twin daughters who are half black and half white, and this is really, really curious to me. So I'm going to bring her in right now.
All right.
Hey, Becca.
Hi.
Okay.
Becca, how are you?
I'm listening in. It's interesting so far. I mean, I expected to hear a little more. I don't know. It's like a reasonable conversation, but I don't really know. I don't really know where to start.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna start with some things. I guess my biggest thing is like separating, like why we acknowledge the fact that everybody is the same in regard to like, being able to, have children together. We've had years and years of intermixing, so nobody can say they own any particular category anymore. Can we say that, Darren? Can we say that nobody is pure anything at this point?
Pure anything? No. No one can say that.
So why are we fighting? Like, this is what got Nick Cannon into it. Like, why are we fighting for the labels? Like, why is it so important that, Nick Cannon goes out there and says, blacks are the original Jews. Like, there are no, blacks anymore. There are no purebred whites anymore. Like, since that mixing began so many years ago, as you acknowledge, like, why is this so important?
It important.
Well, let me ask you a question. Is Becca black? Becca, are you black? I think we lost her.
Give her time to cut. Yeah, I think she's kind of frozen.
So I would ask the question. I mean, is Becca black? And I would ask Becca, are you black?
I think it's still frozen. Well,
She's frozen.
got lag.
Becca,
Okay.
can you hear us? Yeah, I don't think she can hear us.
No. But I mean, wait, I'll answer the question because I know a little bit about Becca's background. Becca has two parents who would be considered Caucasian. So, where are you going with that? I'll let you.
I'm just trying to identify attributes. Okay, so I will say I'm a black man without question. But
Okay.
at the same time, I could ask Becca, are you black? I'm curious as to what she would say. In my mind, she's not. No big deal. It's just
Okay.
that, are you an oak tree or are you a maple tree? I mean, it's just an acknowledgement of a difference. It doesn't mean anything bad. It doesn't mean anything good. It's neutral. It is what it is. It's an observation.
So in your mind, you're saying in your mind she's not black because what?
For one, I mean, the obvious, her complexion.
Okay, so you're saying she's not black because her complexion. So if she was okay, so what? So your complexion is what makes you a particular race.
I mean, without question, Drew Barrymore is not black.
Okay,
Cameron Diaz is not black.
okay,
That's all.
that's just off complexion. That's just off complexion.
Off complexion. Period. Now, now here's where we have to get absolute.
Mm-hmm.
They're not black, but then again, neither are you and I. My hat is black.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how we're referred to as. Okay, so perhaps the proper term would be of color.
Okay. So how much color do you have to be of color?
Yeah, I get your point. I've heard your words over time, and I understand what you're getting to. But
I'm just saying.
with everything that we've grown up in and experienced here in America, there is an understanding that people of color are called black. Now, Latinos, the people that we identify as Latinos, are not always considered black, depending on their characteristics. I've seen Latinos darker than me, with kingly, bushy hair, and quote-unquote black characteristics. I've seen fair-skinned Latinos that are as fair as Becca was.
Mm-hmm.
But there is an understanding of what it is to quote-unquote be black in America. And I don't really think there's a gray area.
Okay, so, but you recognize that those terms that you're applying, black, white, like, those come after the origin story of, the Hebrew and whatnot. So it feels like, so you're acknowledging that you're conflating the two, in order to create the narrative. You're conflating the fact that there was this tribe that existed before Jesus with this social construct that was invented
Without
in
question.
Germany by Johann Friedrich Blumenbach, 1775.
Without
So
question.
that's whenever black,
And
white,
it even goes earlier than that. If I'm not mistaken, to 1680 here in America, where that construct was established.
oh yeah,
And
yeah,
within the confines of that construct, it was deemed and determined that black men of color could not associate with, date, procreate with, or marry Caucasian women.
okay,
And that was the beginning of the construct in America. 1680. I watched a speech on it, and it was broken down, and they went into detail. But it was established here in America by legislation that certain people couldn't do things with other people, and then that was the beginnings of this tumultuous race situation that we have today.
okay. I want to bring in my boy Seven. Who's here? He's got a little bit of a background in this. He wanted to get in the mix too. What's up, Sev?
Seven, what's up, brother? What's up, brother?
Your microphone's off a little bit. I can't hear you. Can't hear the audio.
My bad, I have myself muted. Can you
There
hear
you
me?
go. Good. Now you're good. Now you're good. Okay, cool.
Peace and blessings. How y'all doing?
All right, all right.
All right. So I'm enjoying the conversation, but I'm just kind of it's kind of interesting. Just it's like the goalpost just keeps moving in terms of trying to figure out exactly what black is and what isn't, and then there's like this of color narrative that's being thrown to it. And I don't know. I mean, and then like I'm just kind of curious, like, to what end is this going? Like, what's the point of it?
That's my thing too. Is like, Nick Cannon, Darren acknowledged Nick Cannon put himself out there. Like he's getting attacked from all sides. He done lost Wild and Out. Viacom says they don't want shit to do with them. Like, what is the point of this? Like, you're sitting here literally committing professional suicide. For what? Like, what is it? Why is this important for us to forward this narrative? If this happened so long ago, all these mergers, all these blending of all these different races and cultures and stuff like that, why is it important for any one people to claim ownership of this title? Why is Nick trying to like say, we're the real Jews or whatever? Because we also are feeding into what he says later on in the narrative, where he basically starts talking, in this black supremacist tone. Like we can admittedly say there is a you can't say it was if a white person had said blacks were savages,
They do.
Exactly. And whenever they do, what do we call them? We call them racist. And so Nick Cannon flips and he says the same thing, and everybody's like, no, he's saying the truth. He's saying the truth. But we can recognize that in both cultures, we can say, in Braveheart with, Mel Gibson back in the day, like they were doing some savage shit. But if you're talking about like, Mansa Musa, if you're talking about the Aztecs, like every single civilization has some kind of savagery, if you will.
So then why would it be wrong to say it then?
I know why.
Go ahead.
Because he has attacked the most protected group of people on the planet who hold the secret that they are not who they say they are. Even though they were persecuted, even though they were massacred, even though they were Holocausted, they're not who they say they are.
Well, I guess the issue, in my opinion, is the fact that he's exclusively making the claim that they were and blacks were not, which we know is categorically untrue, which is the same argument white supremacists use, that they invented civilization and went around the world and civilized everybody.
Well, I got to stop you right there. There's one group of people on planet Earth that's done four things: steal, kill, destroy, and lie. They've done it to the umpteenth power. They've done it for the last 600 years. And it ain't Africans, and it ain't Native Americans, and it ain't. And if you can find it and evidence it and match it chronologically, event for event, action for action. There's one person who's done that.
But
That's
we
the
can
European.
argue. Well, that's the other thing too. We're
That's the
making,
European.
but we're
European
making,
have done it worldwide. No
we're making
other
gross generalizations,
continent,
though. We're making
no other
gross generalizations.
continent, no other continent has savaged the world like the European. For
But
one,
what about what? Okay, we can talk about who became seafaring
Well, I don't know
and
about.
on
Go ahead. Sorry.
savaged the world. I mean, poisoned. I mean, looted. I mean,
Gen-
enslaved. I
Genghis
mean,
Khan.
stole artifacts.
Genghis
I mean,
Khan.
it's the truth. Go ahead.
What about Genghis Khan and the Mongolians? What
Okay.
about Genghis Khan and the
What?
But
Mongolians?
then he probably say, "What about King Leopold?"
I'm just trying. I'm just trying to say we can go back and forth. We can
There is
pull people from
one
every single culture doing.
worldwide savage. You didn't see Genghis Khan in South America. You ain't see Genghis Khan in Brazil. There is one person, one group of people on this planet who have savaged this planet. They've done it with cannon fire and ships.
The Chinese invented gunpowder, but
And the Europeans stole the secret for gunpowder powder from the Chinese.
I don't
And
know.
they mastered it.
I can't verify.
They
I
turned it
don't
into
even know
cannon
how
fire,
we're trying to
and
verify.
they have stolen, killed, destroyed, and lied worldwide.
but then we're also giving gross generalizations and assuming every single member of that particular.
No.
Well, you're saying it. You're saying they. You're saying they. You're not saying Larry.
One group, we have the most savage history of stealing, killing, lying, and destroying. From artifacts, from historical figures, from nations, from enslavement, from slave trade. Tell me I'm lying. Tell
I'm
me
not-
the Asians have done what the Europeans have done. And I'm not saying every person in that group. I'm saying tell me how the Asians have done what the European has done.
Well, I mean,
Not Genghis Khan, what else?
the Japanese repeatedly invaded China, and they actually have whole museums. The Nanjing massacre, I think we're arguing, I guess scope.
I'm counting. I mean, you gave me 2 instances. I can give you 50 instances off the cuff of what the European has done worldwide.
Okay.
Brutal, savage, raw, Satanism.
Okay. So can it be argued that absolute, maybe in regard, we're talking about opportunism, like if other civilizations had some of the technology that was being utilized, by the colonizing Europeans and whatnot, would they have been less hostile, or would they have thought manifest destiny? I need to explore the world. I need to do these things.
Well, I mean, they've already explored the world, though, haven't they? I mean, black people were here before anybody.
Everywhere.
They were here in America before anybody. There's a
Okay,
book
so-
called They Came Before Columbus.
So what? So how do we determine them as being black? Just because the fact they came from Africa? Is that what we're saying?
Just
Yeah.
the monuments built in their name, that they were built that outdate and predate all the civilizations that are here currently. I want to point to, what is it? That big, huge head statue. I believe it's in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Of the brother. I mean, it can't be nothing but a black man with those lips and nose. I'm just saying.
Okay.
I mean, so items like that, artifacts like that, kind of give credence to that theory.
So we're just-
Joseph Brandon, we had this conversation 3 and 4 and 5 years ago.
Yes, we've had it repeatedly.
And the issue is that you will not honor, respect, acknowledge, or declare a race as a fact.
It's not about it's not about declaring physical characteristics. It's not about denying culture or ethnicity. It's the concept of race that gets me. It's the fact that there seems to be this tally chart that everybody has to notch off on. We're like, aha, blacks, we got math. And then
Yeah,
Chinese,
but
whoa,
why-
we got Asians,
why-
we got gunpowder.
What do you think? So let's all answer that. Why is it that we start with race? Why? What do you think it is? No wrong answers. Why is it that race is the original container, the original describer? Oh, well, he was black, or she's white, or their kids are mixed. Why is it? Why is that? I have my answer. What do you think?
That was not until the Americans. I mean, that you talking about here in America, or just in general?
Pretty much in America, because that's where we are. I mean, I would say America.
that was knocked into the American psyche, and part and parcel, I guess, in the founding of this country. When the founders, or I wouldn't even say the founders, but when our science, the social scientists of those days decided to come over and say, "Hey, we need to create a separation of people." I mean, that
I agree with that. I would say, hands down, white supremacy, the false notion of white supremacy. That's right.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, well, to try to establish a rightful reasoning for their position,
Or to try to establish a lie.
Yeah. Well, same
There's
thing.
no such thing as white supremacy.
Same thing. But yeah, I mean, basically, we're talking about they had, I guess you could say, planted the notion that white people are superior because of, genetics, because, this is just ordained by God. This is just the way it is. We can't help it. God just made us this way. So
That to me is at the root
Yeah.
of this all. That's
I mean,
where the race construct comes from.
I agree with that.
That's where the problem comes from. The false notion of white supremacy is the problem.
So why feed into it by perpetuating the narrative? That's my thing.
You don't have to.
If we acknowledge that white
feed into it, I mean, if your house gets infested by roaches, you don't feed into the roaches. You eliminate them. Now,
Well,
I'm not suggesting we eliminate white folks. That's insane. I'm not trying to sound crazy, but we have to eliminate the notion, the false notion, the lie of white supremacy. There's no such thing.
And the only way you can do that, because I agree with both of you, I believe the construct was invented to validate the idea of superiority.
Or, in agreement with you, it was to validate a false notion.
Of superiority. I got you. Okay,
Sure.
so we all agree on that page, all
We
right?
agree on that.
So by continuing to use that language, by continuing to define ourselves, like if you enter a game, right, and you recognize that game is rigged, why would you walk on the court and be like, okay, put me in, coach, I'm ready to play. Okay, you're going to start 50 points behind because this is the title we're giving you.
Well, did you see, remember the Titans?
Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah.
There's a scene in the movie where they're playing in the championship game, and the refs are cheating left and right. Denzel's going off. And the other coach pulls everybody together and said, look, they gained 1 yard, I'm pulling you all off. Despite the fact that they were cheating, they still won. They still played that game, and they still won.
Mm-hmm.
So let them cheat, let them lie, let them pretend. There's still victory on the other side. It doesn't have to be, I'm not playing at all. And when it comes to race, I mean, sure, you don't have to dive in headlong and argue with everybody about race and say this and say that and do this and do that. But acknowledge it and eliminate it is my own.
7, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I found myself kind of somewhat perplexed in thinking about how educationally it seems like we're always in comparison, always in some sort of there's always some sort of comparison between black people and white people. Like it's not like Latino and white or Asian and white. None it always seems interesting to me that when it comes down to let's say like again we're talking about education. So let's say white what black person, Asian, Latino, white, everybody takes the same test. Asian does better. White people will be okay with that. Black person does better. Not a problem. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, so it seems to me like there's always been some sort of, well, I don't say always, well, yeah, always. There's always been some sort of like comparison. Like we can be better, someone else can be better than us, sure, but we damn sure better beat them black folks. Like
but I think it's also situational too. I mean, we accept the fact that most every race is like black people are great at sports or whatever. Then we get into stereotypes. Like there's areas where we're allowed to excel,
We are.
and areas where we're not supposed to excel.
Wait a minute. We are the outright best athlete on the planet. Period. All things physical.
I suck.
Period.
I suck. I'm black all day long. I cannot play
That doesn't
basketball,
mean,
save my life.
earlier,
I suck
that
at
doesn't mean
football.
that doesn't mean every single black person
Right.
is going to be a good
We're not a
athlete.
monolith. Yeah.
But when it gets down to athletic contests, especially
Okay.
with these right here, you know who's going to be on top. Period. Anything with the legs, feet, throw, tackle, catch, shoot, you know who's the leader. Period. You can't argue that. You can't argue that, male and female. Look at the Olympics, the last Olympics. Now, when given an opportunity, you got domination across the board.
So is that black or is that genetic?
That is genetic and black.
Oh,
So,
Nah,
so you're a
that's what I'm trying to
eugenicist?
say. You're conflating the concept.
So are you a
That doesn't mean there's no
eugenicist?
such thing as
You
an
believe in
anomaly.
eugenics?
There's always going to be an exception and an anomaly.
What are you
There's
saying?
always going to be a white dude. There's a white dude now in Georgia. I watched the video on it. Fastest player on the team. It happens. But in general, you know who's going to be in the front group leading and winning when it comes to physicality.
What were you saying, Seven?
I was just asking if the brother is a eugenicist.
Is what?
A eugenicist, with someone who believes in eugenics.
Eugenics?
Yeah.
Eugenics meaning the Nazi chick that started Planned Parenthood? Break it down.
Well, eugenics basically is the belief that, one, basically it's, I guess you could say, to make it simple, it's like horses. How they basically breed horses to try to get the fastest, best horse. So eugenics believe that certain races could be made better by staying within certain races and making sure that they got, because that will thereby create the better gene pool.
I think that's warped, white supremacist, Aryan-minded, Eurocentric thought process.
But you're saying it's okay for black folks.
It's not that it's okay, but I'm acknowledging the end result. When it gets down to physical competition,
Mm-hmm.
you have a tendency to have a person of color win.
So, going off of what Seven is saying, if black people who have all these innate characteristics end up getting involved too much with people of other races, that would weaken their ability to
Without
excel in these
question.
areas.
Without question. I'm a product. My father's 6'2", 240. My mother's 5'3". I ain't gonna say her weight. And light skin. And that has led me to be a smaller, less capable, less competent physical specimen.
But
Now,
what are the,
I'll give you a perfect example.
Go ahead.
I'll give you
Go
another
ahead.
perfect example. One of my favorite brothers, my son's best friend. His dad was, he passed away unfortunately. He's 6'4", 260. His mother is 5'9", well built. That brother is 6'8", 340. That's not an accident. That's not an exception. You hear about it with slave masters. Slave masters would take the biggest dude, link him up with the biggest slave,
Mhm.
make them procreate for that child to be just like them. It's genetics. It's going to be passed down.
So how come Michael Jordan's kids ain't nothing on basketball? They ain't even make it to the NBA.
Look at his wife.
Damn.
Little light skinned lady, little itty bitty thing.
Damn.
You know. Now let Mike and Serena have a child and watch what happens. Look at his wife. It's gonna break you down. You're gonna end up with less melanin. You're gonna be light skinned. You're gonna have a smaller stature.
Steph Curry is one of the best NBA players out there, and he's almost light bright.
Steph Curry.
He got
Complexion doesn't doom you to incapability.
Oh, what you just said it did.
Complexion does not doom you to incapability.
You can't switch it up.
No,
You
it would be outrageous to suggest that a light-skinned brother can't do what a dark-skinned brother can do.
But that's
not
what
I'm saying.
That's what you're saying. We got a
Never heard me utter those words.
We got a bunch of mulattoes who can.
Complexion does not doom you to
Okay.
incapability.
Okay.
Now, if you, all right, so y'all tell me, you take the 100 strongest, toughest, baddest black men on the planet.
All light
You
skin.
get, now, no, check it out. And you get the baddest 100 white dudes on the planet, and you put them in an open field with no weapons. Who's winning that fight?
I mean, that depends. I mean, if you're
Who's
talking
winning
about,
that fight?
Where-
if we're talking about, well, I
No
mean,
weapons.
there's nature and nurture. Like we could talk about if I could bring
I mean, are the 100 black men a bunch of data
No,
scientists?
no.
Exactly.
Exactly.
if you have no war training,
No best.
I mean, and are the
No.
white guys like, people who've been training in the outback for like
Bro,
30 years?
Yeah.
back from behind.
Because of
There
course
is
they're
a
going to be.
capability in general.
So you're saying if you take if they have the same capabilities and same, basically same stature, same feet, not same features, but same makeup,
Yeah.
you're saying black people will come out on top.
It's not coming out to human chance. To Joseph's point, it's not coming out to human chance. There is a genetic, innate capability that others don't have.
so why wouldn't a country like Russia say, "Fuck it, we're inferior, so we just need to go ahead and import Africans to fight for us because we'll never be able to."
Well,
to
if they
battlefield."
don't-
They have
they
military
don't
technology,
like the code.
espionage.
So what? Espionage.
Because they have military technology, treachery, and espionage. Why would they do that?
I just say because it's cold. They know black people don't like the cold.
Yeah, no, there is an advantage. to being black.
Why doesn't America have nothing but? I mean, I know a good majority of people in the service in America are minorities. Why would we not just have an all black military, infantry in all branches?
They have military technology, treachery, and espionage.
Okay,
White man wins because he cheats, fellas. Sorry, that's just my personal opinion.
okay,
He cheats, he lies, he steals, he destroys.
but then you got African countries where people are doing the same cheating, lying,
And you
corrupt.
don't have a comparable military technology, espionage, infrastructure, and treachery.
But you do. You do. You got some like Zuma in South Africa. Like he was on some.
Against each other over there, perhaps. But on the world stage, you won't see an African nation match military technology, espionage, and treachery that European nations
But that-
in America have.
But I don't think that's genetic though. I think that comes down to opportunity. Like I think you're creating a hard division when it comes to race and not adhering
I'm generalizing. I'm
history.
generalizing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like heavy generalization.
I'm blurting out opinions.
Okay, all right.
There's no question. I mean, what
We're
is
just
the
talking-
equivalent of Shaq in the Caucasian race? Shaquille O'Neal.
You said what?
What's the-
Shaquille O'Neal in the Caucasian race. Who is the equivalent of where is he? Who is he? Where is he? Or even Will, 60 years ago. I'm listening.
I mean, I know there's Yao Ming is like an Asian equivalent of Shaq.
That's one. Who else?
I don't. I'm not big on that. I just know.
Yeah, why is that? Why is that though? What is the equivalent of Mike Tyson in the Caucasian race? Why is that, bro?
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that.
Right,
Well, I mean, first of all, it can be argued, but that's also a nature versus nurture thing. Like Mike Tyson, Mike Tyson grew up in the streets, like whooping ass. Like,
Right, no, so let me understand. What is your understanding of nature versus nurture in layman's terms? What is nature versus nurture?
environment. So, like poverty created Mike Tyson. Poverty created Mike Tyson.
Poverty made him one of the
Privilege
fiercest
won't create a Mike Tyson.
No, well,
Privilege won't create a Mike Tyson.
fighting for your very life is what creates a Mike Tyson. So unless you have a white person subject, and I'm pretty sure there might be some situations where you have somebody growing up in rural Appalachia who's getting his ass beat on a regular basis, who probably could throw some hands too or whatever. But
Who? Why is
I
it?
don't know.
Why is it that no one could beat Jack Johnson in his prime?
I
Why? Why is that?
don't know.
There are a
Why
lot
is
of
that?
I mean, there are a lot of fighters in there.
All right, why don't blonde-haired, blue-eyed white dudes win the 100 meters in the Olympics? Why is that?
I mean,
Why
they
don't they see them in the top 5? Why do we never see that? Why is that? I'm listening.
could be. I mean, why do most of the runners? Here's another thing too. Okay, so if that's the case, why aren't most of the runners, the long distance runners, coming who are successful? They're not coming from the United States. They're coming from Kenya, and not in a very very specific region of Africa that is genetically equipped to run those long distances.
What complexion are those Kenyans?
Yeah, but the fact is, you have people just as dark.
They're not coming from here. They're not
Exactly. You have people just as dark here in the States who can't go up against somebody from the Maasai tribe in Kenya who can run long distance.
But again, why is it that we don't see anybody from Africa who is the fastest person in the world?
What do you mean, the fastest person in the world?
Usain Bolt is not from Africa.
Usain Bolt's from Jamaica.
No. I never said
that. And before that, we had Maurice Green from Kansas City.
I'm saying, why don't we see blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryans in the top 4 at the 100 meters at the Olympics? Olympics in, Olympics out, every 4 years. Why not? Why don't we see that?
I would say genetics, but I wouldn't say race.
I would also.
I'll give you genetics. I won't give you race on that because that's what we're arguing about here.
Why don't Aryans have that same genetic capability? Why is it that black men win and hold the championships in all of the boxing categories?
I think it's well. I'll put it like this. I feel like it's because for us, we're always trying to. I'm gonna say trying to, but for us, it seems like we have to prove something. We're fighting for something. We're pushing for something. Whereas for them, in a lot of cases, it feels like they're trying to maintain where they think they already are.
African American athletes?
No, white people. So I'm saying on one side, so yeah, white people who are saying that this is where we should be, so they're like running in, that's their race. Whereas a black person running has a completely different mentality for a race. I have to win.
Well, I mean, like, I'm getting down to in our lifetime, why have we not seen a white heavyweight champion hold the title for 5 years? I'm just curious. Why?
I mean, I'm not saying you won't. That's what I came All right, I'll give you that, DLB. I'll give you that. Okay, so let's say, why haven't we seen this? But eventually, at some point, 100 years from now, 200 years from now, whatever, you're going to have somebody who had, a white great granddaddy, an Asian, great aunt, a black, ish, grandmother, or something like that. You're going to see that eventually. Like, what are you going to say? Like, who wins at that point? Who is there on in the winner's circle? Is that a black person in the winner's circle, or is that?
Always going to have exceptions, but for whatever reason.
But no, they will eventually become they are becoming the norm. That's what I'm trying to say. Multiracial, the other category.
I would never fix my lips to say that if you have some white Indian, you ain't gonna be shit, or you can't win, or you might as well give up. I'm never gonna say that. I'm never gonna say a light-skinned brother can't dominate. I'm never gonna say that.
I'm not saying that. What I'm trying to say is, at some point in the near future, because that's what all this contention is about right now. Just like Public Enemy was talking about, fear of a black planet. Because basically, whenever you combine, based off of race and the construct that was invented, whenever you add anybody of color to European bloodlines, that bloodline is forever tainted. From that point forward, those children are all black from that point forward. One drop rule. So eventually, in the future, you're going to have, and you're seeing more and more of this, multi-ethnic children that don't fit into that box of, they don't check that box off and say I'm black, because to them they would be denying their white parentage, whether it be from their mom's side or their father's side, or Asian parentage or Hispanic parentage. So it's like, at some point, you're going to have everybody mixed up. It's going to be like, trying to take sugar out of Kool-Aid when it's mixed in. It's like, how do you do that?
I get that, brother. I'm not against interracial relationships. I'm not against children of interracial relationships. I'm not trying to say
Oh wow.
because you have white in you or because you're black in you, you're this or you're that. I'm not trying to say that, but regardless how we shake it, Barack Obama is the first black president.
He's the first black president by the definition of race, and we are immediately.
Black
I
man.
mean, but if we're going by the one drop rule, George Washington was too, and so was Abraham
Right.
Lincoln.
But okay, but
There's a book called Our First Six Black
Obama.
Presidents.
All right,
And
so
that was
let's take
Obama was even thought of.
let's take a 3-man poll. Was
Okay.
Barack Obama black? I say yes. Or was he?
You said what?
Was Barack Obama black? Yes or no? Closed-end question.
I don't think that's a. I mean, that's the thing too. It's like, I mean, well, how by what metric? By what
Was
metric?
Barack Obama black?
By
Yes.
what metric? That's my question. By what metric? Because he calls himself.
3 men, no wrong answers. Let's take a poll.
Okay.
Was Barack Obama black? I say yes. What do you say, gentlemen? Was he
By
black?
I'll give multi-question. Yes and no. I'm
Hey, that's
taking
not
both.
my thing, bro.
Yes, I can. I'll tell you why. Yes,
You
if
can
you're
do
going
what you
by.
want, but a closed-end question is a closed-end question. An open-end question is unlimited. A person can go on for 6 paragraphs and answer an open-end question. A closed-end question has 2 criteria: either
Mhm.
a yes or a no. No maybes, no perceptions, no opinions.
But
Yes
a-
or no. Now,
But a closing question.
My brother
but a-
Seven said yes. I said yes. What do you say, my brother?
And I'm saying a closing question. You've got to give me more parameters
Oh,
for
no,
that.
I asked you a flat, closed-end question.
I know you are, but the thing is, there are multiple ways to address that answer
Was
based off
Barack
of.
Obama black or white? Was he black? Yes or no?
He calls himself black.
Barack Obama black? Yes or no?
He calls himself black.
This is what you do on Facebook too. Bro, this brother.
I can't give it. I can't go there.
Without
I can't go there and definitively say so without, because you're asking me to apply an unscientific construct to this question. And so if you're asking me to apply,
brother. Sometimes it's perception.
but no, that's the problem. This is the problem of the construct you want me to barrel through. You want me to just go ahead and say he's black because we accept him as black and he was called black, and so he's blackity black because that's what black is.
Brendan Johnson. Was
Yes.
Barack Obama black.
By what metric?
Ah.
Because the thing is, if you are going by the one, I will give this to you, DLB. If you are going by the one drop rule that race applied, then yes, he was black. If you're going by the one drop rule that race applied when it was invented, yes, you are correct. He is black.
We have three
But-
men saying that Barack Obama was black.
Yes, by the one drop rule, that I'm going to go by that because that is what race does. So, but by that metric,
And that you have little to no respect for the construct of race.
no. Why would you respect that racist shit? I was supposed to. I don't know.
Bro,
That's the problem.
I've heard you say it. I've seen you type it. I get you, brother. I feel you. You good?
That's the language of the enemy for me. That's the language of division for me. Everything that we go through as human beings.
That's the language of the enemy?
Yeah, we didn't invent race. Black people did not. Black people did not invent being black.
Who's the enemy? Just curious. Who's the enemy?
The people who perpetuate that lie.
Who are they?
The people who benefit from the lie.
Who are they?
The wealthy. Who? Because the thing is, it's not all white people. That's the thing.
What's
There
that?
are the people who benefit from the lie. The people who benefit from the lie are the same people who conducted the construct. You didn't have some poor white dude saying, you know what, I'm going to start calling these people black people, these people red people, these people Asians. No, it was affluent white people who had the power to control and shift a narrative. They invented it to justify Western, to justify.
Race is puppeted by the wealthy.
Yes, that's the main thing. There aren't poor people saying we need to make sure this is going to be incorporated into every facet of our society.
I agree with that.
They weren't doing that.
I agree with
Whether it
that.
was black, white, Asian, they weren't doing that. you had people who are justifying, because basically they're going out and committing the atrocities, like you stated, and they're coming home and they're bringing home the spoils of their conquests, which weren't just, you know, silks and spices, but actual human beings. So they're bringing back Native Americans as slaves. They're bringing back Africans as slaves. And you have some people among them, this is why I'm saying the generalizations don't work. You had some people among them that were like, hold up, those are people you're fucking with right there. Like, that's a human being that you have. And then you have those people who are like, hold up, this is free labor. My shit's about to get fucked up if I don't figure out some way to justify this. No, he's not a human. Yeah, he's human-ish, you know, but he's not a full human. As a matter of fact, there's a whole classification for him. We're gonna call them Negroids. And so that puts them in a situation where, you know, everybody else can buy into the great lie and say, oh, okay, it's okay for us to do that to them because they're Negroids, they're savages, you know? And so because of that, like, you know, let's go ahead and do more of this. They're Negroids, they're savages. It's the original othering. It's the same thing we're doing to migrants at the border. They're illegals.
So
It's
race
the
is
same
here,
thing.
and wealth is here, is what you're saying. Wealth is above it, control
Yes,
race.
wealth is above the race. If wealth was not a factor, race would not exist. I truly believe that. Ethnicity would exist. Ethnicity would exist. Tribalism would exist. Race would not exist if wealth were not a factor. Race was invented to justify the subjugation of everybody who is considered an other. You can't dispute that. Black people did not invent race. Asians didn't invent race. Hispanics didn't invent race. It was one group of people who were facilitating manifest destiny, expansion, conquest, bloodshed all over the globe, and basically is trying to say, divinity has granted us this right. We are this group of people. Everybody else is a separate group of people from us.
All right, so
Okay.
you got
Providence is the word they like to use.
Go ahead, Seven. I'm sorry. What's she Seven?
Oh, I was just throwing it in. My quick 2 cents just says, I said providence is the word that they like to use.
Yes, divine providence.
Divine,
God
absolutely.
made us.
Divine.
God
Yes.
made us this way. And because God made us this way, we have every right to do this to everybody who is inferior to us. Because God looks like us. He talks like us.
Whoa,
He
whoa,
gives
whoa.
us the ability to do this to people.
They told us God was like this.
So
I
what?
had this conversation before. One of the things they've done is superimpose a Caucasian image to represent quote unquote God.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you agree? Do you disagree?
That they
No, I
co-opted. What? No, I don't disagree with
I
you.
do not disagree.
Okay, there you go.
That
Yeah,
means
so,
I agree with you.
so basically, now when we talk about wealth, having a control over race,
Mm-hmm.
can we agree that there's a tendency for the wealthy to be Caucasian?
Yeah, because they invented race. That's what I'm trying to say. They invented race, and so they justified their accumulation of wealth, which involves stealing from these same people they considered inferior, which involves stealing from those people themselves, and they built up wealth, and they've just been protecting it, you know, ever since.
So the idea of accumulation of wealth, can it be interchangeable with greed?
Well,
Greed,
Yeah.
greed.
I
Is
would
it
say the excessive accumulation of wealth. I mean, we recognize wealth as a means of associating value to things. But yeah, like the whole game is won by those people who are the greediest.
Thank you.
Mhm.
That's good. Now, see, that's an affirmation to me as a Christian. To me, that's also the difference between Christianity and Islam. Islam will tell you that pride is the root of all evil. Christianity will tell you that the love of money is the root of all evil.
Mhm.
So if you take what you just shared as a combination of the two, pride in that we are the ones, this
Mhm.
is God, providence, this is Jesus. You know, that's the biggest hoax ever pulled on the world, was a Caucasian image is Christ. Now, when you switch, you know, now you can go to the Russian catacombs and find a black Christ.
Mhm.
But from 1850 to the present, you've had a Caucasian image. Somebody's lying. Okay, and then when you tie it all together with the actual Jews, the opposing Jews, Nick Cannon's comments, now you have a group of people pretending to be of Providence or like God, also being the greediest, and then you have them linked together with these quote unquote false Jews. And now you have a Judeo-Christian alliance. And now you have a group of people that you can pinpoint, associate, and attribute lying, stealing, killing, destroying to as a group. Now, everything that you're saying, I can accept that wealth controls race and puppets. But I could also say this one group is doing it. Now
But but then I mean, how's that explain to Kanye West? Like he's not Judeo. I mean, he's bought into the Judeo-Christian, mantra. I mean, he calls himself extremely religious and talks all kind of nonsense.
Well, Kanye, I'll be the first to say, as a Chicagoan, that Kanye's lost. I mean, seriously. I mean, I don't know how far he's into his med regimen and all that, and and not to make light of his him being diagnosed bipolar. But seriously, I mean, there's got to be something to that when when you thought you were running for president, and then suddenly you say you dropped out. When all of a sudden, when it's revealed that you never did anything to say that you were running other than make an announcement, like how can you drop out of something you never dropped out
already?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. It was one night. It was one or 2 days. Yeah,
he might have an album coming out. I don't know. I think that's,
he got
that brother is retarded.
Yeah. It's extra, but I mean that's the thing is like you have.
But the fact remains that he's somebody who had money, who had influence, and I'm just saying what has he done with that to gain position? Like how is his position changed or
Hey, Registration was a badass album, bro. I still listen to that.
No, I mean Graduation wasn't.
Registration, the album was bad.
Yeah. We can separate I can separate an artist from their art really, really quick. Like I can tell you, he's amazing. He's amazing as a musician, as a showman. But yeah, like there's some other stuff going on.
So real quick off subject, will you bump R. Kelly then?
Do I bump? No, I can't do that. I can't. No, I can't. Here's what. I can acknowledge that R. Kelly was a good artist, but refuse to play his music. But acknowledge that he made some hits. But the thing is, there's a point of no return in regard to me endorsing. It's not the fact that the music is bad, but the fact that the perception of normalizing his behavior is something that I don't want, advanced. So if I play his good music, people might get the perception that I'm cool with the shit that he did. So I can separate the art from the artist. But the thing is,
wouldn't they do that for Kanye West?
Well, I think that Kanye could pass the point of no return at some point. I don't think he's passed it yet. I mean, if you bump his,
still redeemable.
Yeah, I think he's still redeemable.
I mean, I guess in the grand scheme, he hasn't broken any federal laws or committed any felonies.
Right.
Yeah,
and not that would be my criteria, but R. Kelly took it over the top, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
I saw
exactly.
I was just making just the devil's advocate.
I'm with you. I mean, I feel like that comparison needs to be made. It's like you can separate the art from the artist, but there is a point of no return where you can go. Like Bill Cosby right now. Like especially. Yeah. And Bill Cosby, the problem with Bill Cosby is like he was talking so much shit up to the point he got caught. You black people need to pull your pants up, talking about Raheem or whatever. 1 second, I need to go roofie this girl real quick. Like that. At that point, you've gone beyond the pale. Your hypocrisy is what fucked you up.
I feel you on that.
So like you can't listen to I watch the Cosby Show anymore and be like, yeah, I mean he was a good comedian and everything, but if you're asking people to participate in this, everybody knows he was on some hypocritical bullshit, and so it undermines his art. It's the same way as R. Kelly. Like whenever he was producing those hits for Aaliyah, talk about some age ain't nothing but a number. we now listen to that with a whole nother set of ears.
Yeah, man.
But I
That's
mean,
bad.
but here's the thing, though. I mean, let's be real. Everybody knew what was happening when she first came out.
Oh yeah,
It wasn't.
Believe
Everybody knew she was 14. Everybody knew that he got married to her when she was 14. Everybody knew.
true.
Everybody knew that.
Sure.
I'm surprised you got that off. I'm trying to
nobody
figure out
tricked.
how you got that off.
Nobody tricked.
Yeah, but I can
They only
honestly
tricked
say,
when it reached critical mass in
I can
2019.
honestly say when Aaliyah was out, when they were married, I had no clue. I wasn't privy to it. I didn't learn about it until 10, 15 years later.
I was too. I knew that they were dating, but like, I mean, I guess my head wasn't in that space to recognize that like this is a child and these rumors are swirling. Like, I mean, we didn't have the internet back then. You didn't have people gossiping in chat rooms and stuff. Like, it was stuff that was known primarily in the industry. Same thing for R. Kelly. R. Kelly was, molesting girls for years, before it blew up in his face. But, we didn't find that out until, social media allowed it to be put out there, and you had all these people coming forward. Same thing with, Bill Cosby. Like, he was doing all his stuff, but no one was able to come forward and, like, what was it? The comedian came forward and basically made that joke. And it went Hannibal Buress, and it went viral. And then everybody was like, hold up, we need to look at this here. Something's not right. So it's like,
what was this? What happened?
Hannibal Buress made a joke during stand-up about Bill Cosby raping women.
Yeah.
And he was just making some, because basically he was commenting on Bill Cosby's hypocrisy and saying, like, it's like an open secret. Everybody, why are you mad at me? It's true. Everybody talks about this. This is not something, that no one's ever heard of. And everybody was like, you know what? He's right. And so he got caught up in the whole Me Too movement because everybody was like, let's get all the predators at one time. It just became a raid. And Bill Cosby was caught up in that mess. But he's been doing it for some time, enough for him to create a reputation.
Sure. I feel like I was going to say, I feel like we got way off subject.
Oh yeah, we got all that up here.
Yeah. But yeah, back to Nick. I'm hearing what you're saying, DLB, but Rebecca pointed out in the chat, she came back in the chat talking about, basically, I'll read her comment. So her comment says, it's not right in either direction, whether it be white people thinking they're superior or black people believing they're superior. We can all live together without people feeling the need to conquer each other or be above one another. And that feeds into what I was saying initially. It's like there's this need to have this ownership of superiority, because that's what Nick Cannon was doing. He wasn't saying, he wasn't just trying to debunk a lie. He went forward and said, white people that were the ones doing this, when we were doing this, basically giving an air of superiority. And I can't see how that helps with the dialogue. And I can't see what the end goal is outside of affirming superiority of a particular class, which in turn breeds contention. Someone's going to pop up and be like, that's racist, because it is. You're basically saying this race is inferior to this race over here.
Okay, then if we go back to things like athletics,
Yeah.
if leaders, winners, and champions tend to be of a particular race, what does that speak to?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. Is like,
If that's the case, then white people could easily say, well, if all the mayors and governors and presidents have been white generally, what do we? So then that gives credence to some bullshit by Mitch McConnell saying, well, you got for your 400 years, here's one black president. Y'all good, right?
mm-hmm.
No.
I'm saying, what you're saying gives credence to that.
All the black people are in jail, Darren. All the black people are in jail. It's the black people who are in jail.
Majority black people in jail. That must mean that they.
You are comparing two different things, sir. You're comparing two different things.
Okay.
Now, the last 60 years of sports and black dominance, when we were finally allowed to participate, has nothing to do with presidential or mayoral or governor candidates.
You're talking about
Nothing at all.
you're trying to go with innate talents and all that.
You're talking physical output and political output. It's two different things. So I see your point in that, okay, you generalize that one person has a tendency to do well at a certain thing, so we might as well just keep it at that. But when it comes to physicality, there's a reason why you have this level of dominance. Why is the NFL 65% black? All of a sudden,
75.
why is it that 75? Why is it that 60 years ago, black men could not play in the NFL? Not that the NFL is the standard, or why is that?
It's actually a good microcosm of America, though.
Why is that, though?
When you think about it.
Why is it that from 15% of
I'll tell you why.
dominance in
It goes
physicality?
back, but it goes back to the eugenics you were talking about. You had 400 years of breeding of those biggest, strongest, blackest slaves, right? And then you free them. Genetics, they're still going to be there. All those strong genetics you were looking for to make them more viable in the field still exist. And so I feel like if white people were enslaved and we only bred the strongest, biggest white people for 400 years, I think they can hold their own. I think. You don't think so? Oh, I think so. You can't say eugenics only works for. You can't say eugenics only works in one direction, dude. You can't say that.
Why is it?
Because we didn't breed them for 400 years.
Okay.
Why?
If you bred white people the way that the forced eugenics, nothing but the strongest, and that's what Hitler was trying to do.
But that's what I was going to say, though. But to that point, Hitler tried that, and it didn't work.
It doesn't work because
it didn't work. I mean, he had the biggest, best, and brightest, and he injected them with steroids at the Olympics. And Jesse Owens still beat him.
Yes, thank you. In 1936, in Berlin, Germany. Why is that?
Because Hitler didn't have 400 years, though. Hitler was trying to create. He didn't. Hitler was trying to create an Aryan nation out of what he had around him.
Out of the current generation.
Out of one generation. You can't do that. You can't just bring Greta and Hans and have them bang and then just have their kid go out and win the Olympics. No, you need a couple generations to make that kind of strength. That's how Yao Ming was made. Yao Ming was made. He was a product of the Chinese government. The Chinese government got the two tallest people together and said, y'all gonna fuck. And then that's how Yao Ming came out.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. I'm gonna have to
That
check
is
that
good.
out.
I didn't know that, but I know.
Look it up.
Manute Bow's parents are short. Manute Bow, 7'7".
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, his
You
parents are
saw
short.
him in person, Joseph. What color would he be?
Who?
Manute Bol.
What color? He would be of the brown complexion. He would be of the brown complexion, correct?
No. What if you saw Manute Bol? What color would he be to you?
What race or what color?
What color, sir?
Well, here's what's interesting.
Brown.
I'll say this.
Brown.
Just to kind of add a little fuel to the fire, I guess. It was kind of interesting that Manute Bol and Sean Bradley played on the same team, 7'7" and 7'6", and Manute Bol's a Hall of Famer.
Wow.
I ain't heard much about Sean Bradley.
What happened, dude?
So he ended up having joint pains and he had issues with his body and stuff. I think he had a pituitary issue and he's got some medical.
And that's another thing too. Is like whenever you breed too fast, it has to be the breeding has to be gradual. So if you breed too fast, you get too tall people, and you have them have a child. The chances of that child's body being able to withstand some of the pressures, like really, really tall people, they end up dying from heart issues because their bodies can't handle pumping that much blood all over those long lengths of capillaries and whatnot. So the thing is, you have to have a gradual transition to somebody, of that size, you can't just create an uber race in like 1 or 2 generations. So that's what I feel gave blacks in America the benefit. 400 years of forced eugenics.
So you basically tell me you're telling
So,
me.
well then, I'll ask this then. What about Russia? They're pretty monotheistic. I mean, monolithic there. They've had a whole lot of time to be breeding amongst each other.
I don't know. Well, I mean, they also cheat a bunch in the Olympics too. There's a lot of doping and stuff going on there. I'm not sure.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So,
Yeah.
I mean, legit.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know what kind of Russian eugenics program is going on. It seems like Putin's been more focused on corruption than he has been, trying to.
But see, we're not talking about. We got to go all the way back to like Brezhnev. Then, I mean, if we're talking about generations now, we're talking about everybody from then to now, right?
Yeah.
So if we're going to look at, and say that black people had, generations upon generations of this buck and this buck get together, make the super buck, then, I mean, I would imagine that happened. I'm just saying,
I would read that comic, Superbuck. Go ahead.
Hey, no, that's gonna be a new Bitcoin, Superbuck, new cryptocurrency. But where's the story of that taking place in like in China or Russia? Or,
Well, the thing is, I know here, and here's also where
it could be that that wasn't their goal, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
But that's what I'm trying to say. Like here, eugenics was the focus. So just like in Nazi Germany, they didn't just like try to breed the best, brightest, strongest Aryans. They were cleansing the gene pool also. So birth defects and whatnot, like those kids were gassed. They were killed. They were eliminated. And that same eugenics was taking place at a larger scale, generation after generation after generation here in America. You didn't have kids. If a kid had Down syndrome or something, like they were literally, that's where the term gator bait came from. Like they would feed babies to alligators in Florida. So
I mean, that's not where gator bait came from.
No.
Gator bait came from them using black babies to lure gators so they could capture the gator.
exactly. But the thing is, who would be more likely to be used as gator bait? If you had a strong buck that you could put in the field. No, I'm with you.
They didn't wait to see if that cat was autistic. They
I-
were like,
No, but
the complexion matched the dinner table for the alligator.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. But what I'm trying to say is, if you have property,
Yeah.
the likelihood. Now, I'm not saying that no able-bodied children were ever used as gator bait, but just like I'm saying in Nazi Germany, like if you had a child that was not going to be viable as a hard worker in the house or in the field, that child is disposable. Like, I have no need for that child. They're just going to be hogging up resources. So I would use them as gator bait. I would use them as target practice. I would use them however I wanted to use them, but they're not going to contribute to the gene pool at my plantation. I only want the strongest bucks. I only want the most fertile women. That's all I want at my plantation.
So are you saying that America got a 400-year start, and that's why you see a dominance from African American athletes?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I do. But the thing is, it still doesn't explain like we're talking about regarding
I just take that same logic. So 400 years ago, Africans were brought here as Americans. If what you're saying is true,
All right, slave.
wouldn't Africa be even more dominant because they've been there the whole time?
in some ways, but the thing is, you aren't in Africa. You aren't talking about forced eugenics at that point.
Yeah, I was
Like,
going to say Africa's not a monolith. You're talking about
Exactly.
different tribes of
Okay.
people.
You're talking about them going different tribes interacting.
So in Cambodia, in Cameroon, you'll see, and Sudan even, where Manu Bo's from, you'll see taller, darker, skinnier. I mean, the average height, I believe, in Sudan is 6'2".
Yeah,
Mhm.
The average height.
yeah.
That's just.
And you,
Go ahead.
these people are allowed to choose who they want to be with. So you can have marriages, out of love. You can have marriages out of combining tribes and whatnot. But they aren't looking at. I mean, they're not looking at a partner. I mean, given every relationship dynamic or whatever, if you're talking about older relationship dynamics, you're looking for a viable mate. Somebody you got birthing hips, or you're going to be able to take care of my children or whatever. But it's not the same as eugenics, where you're, specifically looking for characteristics, enforcing, you know, a union based off of those characteristics and those characteristics alone. So you have more diversity. If you look at Africa, you're looking at more diversity that's been allowed, you know, because you're not just trying to eliminate the weak and, you know, create ultra
Did
strong.
slave owners practice eugenics?
Yeah. Yeah, they did.
Is that documented? I wouldn't know.
Yeah, no, it's documented. I mean, that's you would take a buck. That's what, I mean, they would split families up. You would take a buck and sell a buck, or take a buck and have that buck go down the road and impregnate, you know, Billy Joe Bob's, you know, slave or whatever.
It was no different than what people do nowadays with dogs.
Yeah, or breeding horses or anything like that.
Get a prize pit. Let's put our prize pits together and make the best prize pit.
Exactly.
So black dominance in athletics is a product of eugenics, is what you're telling me.
I believe so. In this country, yes, I believe so.
I guess I
I-
don't look at it like that.
It's not an innate attribute.
So what?
It's not innate.
It's not. I don't think it's innate. I think it's a combination. Like I said, like I feel like if whites have been subjugated for 400 years to a eugenics program that basically focused on eliminating the weakest of them in this country and only taking the strongest of them, then they could compete athletically, you know, with blacks as they are right now. So if you had 400 years of whites being subjugated, 400 years of blacks being subjugated, you would have two comparable cohorts, in my opinion.
Well,
That's
if you let some racist white people tell it, they were the original Egyptians, and so they were enslaved.
Who was the original Egyptians?
So, white people.
That's a lie from the
Hey, I
Oh,
know.
yeah,
I know.
no.
I'm just saying, if you let some racist white people tell it, they will say, "Oh, my people." I mean, Richard Spencer, one of the heads of the alt-right, he talks about it all the time how his people were enslaved in Egypt, and they got out of that, and they were in bondage, and once they got out of that, they realized that they were the dominant race, and then God saw to it. See, providence. God saw to it to clear the path, basically, for them to start whooping ass and getting on top.
and that goes back to what Nick Cannon was talking about. You know, that's where I feel like the root of the ownership comes from. It's about justifying or giving divine providence to some group of people via the ownership of a label, which basically enables them to say, you know, whatever I do, you know, is sanctioned. Whatever I do is holy. And I'm not saying that Nick Cannon was advocating for, you know, genocide, but I feel like that's where the root, you know, starts off. It's like, you know, you start off first thinking we're superior, and then somebody takes it to the next level. We're superior, and because we're superior, we deserve this. And then somebody's like,
Now, let's bring all that home.
Nick was telling the truth as he knew. I mean, and
Is
if you
that
read the
what-
book by Dr. Henry Clark, I mean, they'll say they will reflect that same.
Okay, so is what you just explained, okay, what Israel has done, the nation of Israel, that was established in 1948. Have they done that?
some,
Yeah.
have they done that? Some Israel, yeah, I do believe, like Benjamin Netanyahu is, yes, racist as fuck.
Yes.
He is.
And he's bought into the construct of race. He's bought into the idea of Jewish superiority, and because of that, he believes that they can do whatever they want to do to the Palestinians.
As well as the Ethiopian Jews.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they don't even acknowledge them. They won't even let them come to temple.
Which
So
is
I think it's like it's while I get where Nick Cannon was coming from in regard to trying to hop into this narrative and shift it, you know, or whatever, it's still an ideology that's preaching superiority, not with the end result of, you know, unity, but
Is
to
it
create-
preaching superiority or is it preaching truth?
well, I mean, that's the thing. Is like
People don't want to hear,
like
'cause
you said, it's the truth as he knows it. It's the truth as he knows it. Like the Jews have their own story in regard to it. It's the truth as they know it. But the fact is, at the end of the day, it's like, you know, where can we say the original black man, you know, or the original white person? Like, at what point was white invented? At what point was the original black person invented?
If you ask Dr. Yakub,
Oh, here we go.
Uh-oh.
Yes,
Uh-oh,
sir.
Dr. Yap,
Break
ooh,
it down.
Here we go.
uh-oh, confusion.
But all right. So let's look at what we're saying here, and this speaks to exactly what you and I started with.
Mm-hmm.
The Caucasian is a manufactured man. Broken
By
down.
manufactured by
Now,
what?
now
Are
let's
we
tie everything together.
okay? I'm gonna let you go with this.
Broken down in a manner similar to eugenics.
Okay.
There was two genes found: a jet black gene and a dark brown gene
Where were these genes found?
in Egypt.
Okay.
Under
They're
Dr.
laying around on the ground somewhere. Somebody found some.
No, not
I'm
genes,
never-
but
No, I got that. Sure.
people containing the gene.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay? And they would produce two things: a jet black individual and a dark brown individual. And what
Okay.
he found through experimentation is that two jet black individuals had a tendency to produce a brown individual. Now,
Okay.
two brown individuals had a tendency to produce a lighter brown individual.
Okay.
Two lighter brown individuals had a tendency to produce a light skinned, as we say, black person.
So if enough
And
light,
no, let me finish.
Okay.
Now, from that, okay, you could also produce the redhead, the brunette, the blonde-haired Aryan, as we say, and the albino. So they are all genetic mutations that come from procreation. Now, it took me a while to kind of get a hold of this, but the lifespans in biblical times are considerably longer. Okay, so, for example, biblically, Noah or Adam lived to be 930 years old.
according to that text, I don't.
Or
I'm not sure, but according to that,
Okay, now, have we seen that in our lifetime? No. But for the first time, because it overlaps with Egyptians, okay, the book of Genesis overlaps with Egyptians, now you have a lifespan in which you can carry out an experiment of that magnitude and end up producing that lighter genetic mutation. Where there's like 8, he breaks it all the way down and then creates a group or community of blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryans and albinos.
So basically, after enough generations, we can get a white person out of a black population. That's what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Now, is that preposterous? Is that realistic? Is that possible? Is that insane? What is it?
Well, I mean, I know light-skinned people have been having sex for a while, and I haven't seen it manifest. I know light-skinned people who have married other light-skinned people, and they haven't had, quote
But
unquote.
that's within one lifetime.
Okay.
That's within
Well,
your
how many?
lifetime, right?
Wait. So aren't these kids all being made in the same lifetime that you were talking about with the dog making
Well, that was now
comma making the mocha making the butterscotch making the vanilla.
there you go.
Didn't you? I mean,
Now,
isn't it all basically like along the same line, or is it? Are you just saying like this is one generation?
look, let's put it in perspective. We're gonna live to be 80, 90, maybe 100.
Okay.
Okay. A 930-year-old man, as an example,
I can't go with that. Okay, go ahead.
could pull that off.
Okay.
Where he could over time.
Wait, so was that 930-year-old man having sex with his own?
I was about to say, like, you should
I'm
have
not
so
saying
many
he could
children.
do it. I'm saying he could establish that experiment, carry it out through generations, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
To witness and experience that breakdown. So,
Okay.
if it took 600 years to produce a light-skinned race from black people, a 930-year-old man could see it come to pass.
Okay.
Now, I know it's difficult for you to retain because
Oh no, it's not different to be retained. It's
no.
it's different.
I mean, it wasn't like
I can retain it. Accepting it is a problem.
just
All right, so
out of this world. That's all. Not really.
this is a camp. This is I'm going to say I found this out for the first time in the mid-90s and thought it was the most
Okay.
preposterous thing I'd ever heard.
Sure.
But is it possible? Is it realistic? Can the human race be broken down from jet black to blonde-haired white through procreation and genetics?
I
So,
just
for
think
example, 7, if you were to have a child with a blonde-haired woman, I asked Joseph this before you came on,
Mhm.
would that child be darker than that blonde-haired woman?
I'm sorry. You said if I had a child with
You had a child with a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman,
uh-huh.
would that child be darker than her?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Well,
how
most
is that?
likely. Most likely. Yeah.
Most likely, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so how is that and why is that?
Probably because my last name is Black Man.
Ah,
Yeah. No, but I mean, but yeah, because of my high melanin content.
right, and also because as a male, you have a dominant trait, and by race, you have a dominant trait.
Okay.
That's going to affect the procreation regardless. Because you're a dark-skinned male, now a white man could have a child with a dark-skinned black woman.
Mm-hmm.
Those children are still going to be darker than him. Why is that, Joseph?
because the mother has more melanin in her DNA.
So the melanin is dominant.
Yeah.
Okay. But at the same time, 7, if you have a child with a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman, that child's going to be lighter than you.
Right.
Not going to be as dark as you, correct?
Probably not.
Right. But now you have a genetic effect. I mean, I don't understand how you can even consider environment and how it can have a play within a
Because,
lifetime.
like I said, it's just like eugenics. It's not going to be like an over environmental adaptation is not something that happens like, in a generation. Like, I mean, it goes back to, like polar bears. Polar bears are a prime example of that. Like, they didn't start off dark up in the Arctic. They didn't start off white up in the Arctic. They started dark, and one polar bear had a genetic abnormality that allowed that polar bear to be able to survive better in that environment because of the fact that they could not be seen against the Arctic tundra because their skin or their fur was white. And so, like, we see it happen in nature all over the place, where you have animals, birds, fish, reptiles that have adapted to their environments over years.
How? Other than a chameleon? What are you talking about?
I mean, there's a fish that swims in a deep sea that can glow.
Exactly. So it's like,
Glows.
and it's not in that bioluminescence. That bioluminescence isn't just native to that one fish. It's native to a whole bunch of animals down in the deeps of the ocean. And here's another kicker too. If you bring them up to the surface, they die. Their bodies can't hold together. So that's like they didn't get born up here where the air pressure and the water pressure was different. They lived their whole lives down there. So unless they were created down there, which they weren't, they had to evolve over time to be able to survive those depths.
That they weren't created down there. What are you talking about?
I
Why are they down there?
I don't believe in spontaneous creation. I believe that, you had a fish, or you had some fish that basically adapted slowly but surely to deeper and deeper and deeper depths until you had a generation that was able to sustain themselves completely down at that lowest depth. It's the same thing. Here's another case. No, but here's another case. If you take a human baby,
Sure.
and that baby, you take that mother, and that mother gets birth in zero gravity, all right, and that baby is raised in zero gravity. When you bring that baby back to Earth, that baby is fucked because
It's a controlled experiment.
But that's the thing. That's a prime example of what I'm talking about in regard to genetic evolution, environmental effects, environmental circumstances affecting how an organism can function. That's just
Brand.
I mean,
What?
In the Arctic. Turn early.
No, it didn't. The bear didn't. There wasn't a bear immediately that just went to the North Pole and said, I'm having kids. Boom, bam, we got one that's
How long does
completely
it
white.
take? How long does it take to turn
I,
completely
I don't
white?
know when the first genetic abnormality happened. All I know is that bear was able to survive and hunt better than the other bears because of that abnormality, meaning that it could pass its genetic bloodline on better, and so that genetic defect, or not defect, but that genetic variation or change, that shift, could be passed potentially to a child. So instead of having one mutation, now you have like a litter of bear cubs that have that mutation. I think they only have like one at a time though. But either way,
Monkey squirrel retard.
So, go ahead, Seven. What did you say, Seven?
I just said monkey squirrel retard fish baby, like they said on South Park.
So,
But
no
no,
one has ever experienced a brown bear turn polar white. But
No,
we
brown bear-
let me finish. So, but we can guess and assume that they mutated over time to become white.
we can guess and assume, yes, a bear offspring had lighter fur. It may not have been pure white whenever it had that variation in it. Just like we recognize albinism. Albinism happens to black people. We recognize that happens.
It's a genetic mutation.
It's a mutation. But albinism also happens to other creatures too. You have dogs that have albinism. You can have, monkeys that have albinism. So in regard to pigmentation,
White albinism?
yeah, black people can have albinism.
Yeah, white people.
Oh, white people have albinism.
No, they
Yeah,
can't.
yeah.
I've never seen a white albino.
But
That's
see, my only problem with that, I'm a creationist, if you will, is no one ever experienced these changes. What evolutionary adaptation have we seen since Darwin?
Well, I mean, we wouldn't see it though, right? Because
Right, what have we seen and
we would see
experienced
the
since
results.
Darwin?
We would see the results of it, but it's not like something that you can see and witness as it's occurring.
Yeah, I mean, but like what species in the animal kingdom has changed its characteristics, its features, its color, its capabilities since Darwin's theory?
What species?
Yeah,
What species has changed?
has adapted in any way, shape, or form
I mean,
since
again,
Darwin.
I think it takes more than a couple decades.
Yeah, it takes some time.
Yeah, it
I mean,
takes-
technically, evolution has never been witnessed. Technically,
right.
The thing is, no, it has been witnessed. If you're talking about, like, scientists have replicated evolution, enforced and guided evolution in labs in regard to single-celled organisms like bacteria. If you're talking about, multicellular organisms, yeah, witnessing that evolution is difficult, but you can force genetic mutations and variations by subjecting single-celled organisms and to different stressors and environments, and you can create mutations, in the lab. Like, that's possible. So, it's not something that you're going to...
sunburn is a mutation, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you can create... I mean, that's all an evolution is, mutations that are favored by your environment versus mutations that aren't. Like, you can have a mutation. If you have somebody having a mutation that causes them to have, like, an open heart outside their body, that's not going to be conducive to them surviving better, and so they're going to die. But if you have somebody who has, like, lungs that, enable them to breathe underwater or whatever, then that might give them a greater chance of surviving if you have, a planet that's overrun with water. And I just gave the whole plot to Waterworld out. But yeah, that's possible. So
Or
it's like,
somebody like Michael Phelps who what was it? I think he has some sort of genetic mutation that allows him to like process and like he doesn't get tired as quickly, and he can execute a lot longer. It's just like part of his genetic makeup. It's not anything that anybody did or anything like that. It's just something that kind of happened. So yeah, so I guess we've kind of seen that. And as a matter of fact, it's to a point where for a moment, Olympic officials were saying that he may have to handicap himself because he had this event.
So why don't primates continue to evolve into humans?
well, that's the thing. It's not. I think that's a misnomer in regard to we split off
I don't
from primates. Primates are an entirely different genetic line. We didn't come. We share a common ancestor if you want to go there. But it's not a matter of them becoming us. Like at some point, our genetic line branched off and their genetic line branched off, and they continue to evolve because all primates aren't the same. A gorilla is not the same as a monkey, but they're both, simian, and they're not the same. You know what I'm saying? And you have, different kinds of gorillas too. So the evolution did continue, but that's different. The great apes are different than, monkeys that operate in trees, which are different than us as human beings.
Joseph, I appreciate you, respect you, and love you, but evolution is a crock of dookie, sir.
Oh, God. Okay.
I mean, you my man, pots and pans.
I got you.
But I'm saying I look at evolution the way you look at the Bible.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, and that's that.
Well, I look at
I still love you, though, brother. I still love you, man. I love the way your brain works, and I can feel it percolate. 7, I know you're a good brother, but evolution is nonsense, bro.
Well,
that's just me talking.
I mean, no, I feel you. Listen, I mean, to be quite honest, I feel like both of them are a crock of shit. To be honest, I feel like the Bible.
So, all right. So, what's real, 7?
I honestly don't know because, as you said, like I haven't seen the evolution or to the extreme that they're saying that monkeys made the retarded monkey fish baby or whatever that made people. I don't know if I can believe it. I don't know if I can roll with that. And I'm really not rolling with, God came down and I'm sorry, sent some people down and made 2 people who had 3 sons, and all of a sudden, humanity. I don't believe that either.
We could do that another time, 7. But
Sure.
a lot of folks miss Genesis chapters 1 through 4.
A lot of people miss Genesis chapter 2, where it talks about here's where to go find gold. Why you need to go find gold when you don't even know who you are? Whatever.
Gold? Did you say
Gold.
gold?
2 and 2. Genesis 2 and 2.
I want to continue this conversation. I got a meeting at 9 o'clock. I got to get to or whatever. But I want to continue this conversation. We will definitely delve into this some more because we want to talk creation next time. We'll set that up.
We'll talk. I have to do that. I'm gonna be ready too. 7. It was nice meeting you.
You too, brother.
I appreciate
Thanks for coming through, DLB.
Glad that we can do this. Be agreeably disagreeable and still be friends at the end of the day. I like that.
This is good. We'll make it happen again.
Love y'all, brothers. Be safe.